Hi everyone, my name is Stan. Welcome to A Russian Opinion. If you're a subscriber to my other channel, Sfilinum, it's my mostly Russian channel. Link is going to be in the description below. Here today we have Jane Feinberg. Feinberg, right?
Right.
Correct. She has been on the show or on the channel before, in Russian though. This time she would like to actually speak her mind and her opinions about things that are currently going on and how it's affecting Russians and Russophobia in general in English for the English-speaking audience. So please, Jane, take it away.
Hi, thanks again for having me, Stan. I love the chance to be here. It's my second time. The first time was in Russian, and I've gotten a lot of feedback, and I appreciate everybody that wrote in their comments. Today, if people look no further than this first few minutes, I want to say that this is going to be about human interest kind of stories and stories in the news over the last couple of weeks since the special military operation has been going that has to do with just basic humans, because I think with the craziness that's going on in the world, it's such a huge temptation that many people have really forgotten that we're all at the end of the day humans. And on one hand, there's talk about racism and all of these terrible, terrible things, and yet they don't see something that's right in front of them that's basically discriminating against people of a different ethnic origin based on the fact that they are from a different country and different ethnic origin. So, if nothing else, please, I hope everybody gets out of this is that we're all humans at the end of the day, and we need to all stay human and be kind to each other. But the crazy world that we live in today, I wanted to focus on a few stories. And before I begin, I wanted to those that haven't seen my previous introduction, I'm just going to say I was born in Moscow and I was raised in the United States. So I am a Russian American, I guess you can say. Um, in Russia, they call me an American because sometimes I forget words that are Russian, but I claim both and I'm proud of that. And my children are both, and I hope that they are proud of that. I was born in Moscow and raised in the United States, and I graduated from high school and college and got an MBA, started a business, built a house, gave birth to two children, all of that in the US. And then later in 2009, we moved to Russia and lived in Russia and going back to the US and in European Union, and that's kind of our story. Um, so the kinds of things that I wanted to talk to you about, Stan, do you remember that story from a few weeks ago about the trees and how the tree from Russia has gotten kicked out of the tree competition? Do you remember that?
The There are many stories that we can talk about. I'm not that familiar with the tree story, but
Oh,
but
okay. Well, let
um,
me tell you about the
sure.
tree. Okay. So there's a competition that is called the European Tree of the Year. And a tree from a Russian region of Orel, which actually means an eagle, which coincidentally I have family at. There was a tree that was destroyed by a storm a year ago, and that tree was nominated. And of course, a couple of days later, after the beginning of this military operation that started, the tree's nomination was taken down because, heaven forbid, a Russian tree is going to be part of this competition. So everybody breathed a sigh of relief. No Russian trees in the European competition because, we are for all things good and against all things evil, dictatorial, Russian scary, scary propaganda, da da da. So we are, trees outside of politics, of course. Well, guess what? Tree won the competition at the end of last month.
What, the Russian tree?
Guesses? No, they were kicked out. No.
I'm just joking here.
Maybe popular opinion would still hold that the Russian tree would win. It's actually Turgenev tree, which is one of the traditional Russian authors, like a who's who of Russian classical literature. But no, the Polish tree has won.
Ah, okay.
It has nothing to do with politics.
Okay.
Um, So that's the funny thing. And I think, as crazy and as absurd as that story is, it really talks about, how did we get to this? How is the world so crazy that we care about where the tree comes from? And of course, in their statement, they said the move is not directed against ordinary Russian women and men, women being first and men being second. That's how they have it written here. We appreciate all active citizens of the Russian Federation who strive for a free civil society and the protection of nature. Because, once the operation started, all the Russian people stopped being for free civil society and for protection of nature. Done. Over. Conversation non existent anymore. So, but that's the crazy world.
Well, it looks like, first of all, it looks like we are going to be having trouble with the camera throughout this whole conversation, but at least you're being recorded. So we'll continue the conversation, and I'm going to be
Okay.
I'm going to be fiddling around with the things here while we speak. So don't worry about it. But
Okay.
it's not just the tree. There are many, many instances when Russians, for being Russian, and that's it, solely based on that, have been either kicked out of a competition, or competitions have been removed, or it's gotten to the point where people can't get health care because they're Russian. There are situations there was a situation where a Finnish player, a hockey player, was denied an operation in Finland. A Russian hockey player was denied an operation in Finland because solely based on the fact that he's Russian. I'm not sure if you've heard about that one or not, but
I heard about in Germany and some clinics also denying treatment to people with oncology, so cancer patients, because they were Russian and they were paying customers. They were not there to get free, freebies. I think that's horrific. I think that's legitimately horrific. I understand that in England now, in the United Kingdom, there are repercussions for being lawyers to Russians. So,
oh, really?
oh yeah, I read that people like the legal teams that would otherwise represent, people in court, that they are told that if they represent Russians, like Russian oligarchs, which means nothing, of course, the oligarch is just, a wealthy businessman. So if you're representing Russian business, that there might be repercussions like sanctions against you from United States and United Kingdom because you are, in bed with the devil, so to say. Of course, never mind the fact that people that do horrible things like serial killers and rapists and what have you, terrorists, they actually by the law are expected to have representation, and there are some of the best legal minds working on their legal cases, but in this case they're going to be reprimanded for it. So those people are denied medical care and oftentimes legal support, which is horrible because I mean, talk about collective punishment, right? I mean,
It is horrible, but there are going to be people who will say, well, you deserve it. It doesn't matter because this is what your country is doing and you're supporting your president, et cetera, et cetera. It is a valid argument, you could say, only if one can bring up an event in history where a country did something like this. And there's been many examples. And that particular country and its citizens were cut off from banking, from travel, from any kind of sports. Okay? Russian cheese has been banned in some kind of museum in the States somewhere. I mean, I know some of it is just trying to get views on social media, saying, "Hey, look, we banned Russian cheese." I didn't even know there was
Russian vodka.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was a cheese museum. That's how I discovered them, because they banned Russian cheese. I'm like, okay, that's a good move on their social media part. No one really
Maybe it's just the marketing. Maybe
yeah,
it's just
it
the
could
market.
be. But the problem is with these marketing, strategies, real people who don't even support this particular. I mean, people call it a military operation. People call it a war. I don't care what we call it. It is what it is. But normal people who don't support it do get punished as well. And in fact, what has happened is that there's been more support for the president of Russia after this operation because we now see the true nature and the true goal of some governments in this world. It's not the whole world. People think that the whole world is against Russia. No, a small portion of it. And many people in those nations are not against, and they understand exactly why it's happening. But the fact that we've been kicked out of all of these different sport federations and competitions and banking, as I mentioned before, I made a whole list. I can't even remember. Trees being canceled, dog shows, Russian dogs aren't allowed, our media, and yet we're told that we don't have freedom of speech when it was our media that was banned first, and then we had to say, well, you're banning ours. Guess what? Get out. We're banning you as well.
Well, and that's the thing, I went to a religious school, and I love to quote the Bible because I think that's something that's common, amongst so many people in the world. I mean, there's a quote in the Romans that says, people that live in glass houses should not throw stones. And it's
Mm.
very true, because you cannot say that, oh, those people over there, they are all things bad and evil, and not you're not so perfect yourselves. And I hate to say that, because I feel like in many ways, the United States, when I was a little girl and the way that I was raised, it was a completely different country. It was, in the way I see it, maybe it's my childhood memories, but I think it has changed quite a bit. The wholesome kind of like the movie Home Alone, American suburbs that I was raised in, they are no longer, something that's available. And that's what I wanted to also talk to you about. Last time you and I talked, that was before I spent the better part of the last spring and summer in Florida. And as much as I love Florida, and that's, my home in the US, if we happen to be in the US, I love that place. But something is just not right. There are things in and this is not directly to do with the military operation. It's not like everything is great here and everything's horrible in Florida and in America, but I feel like the changes that are happening in America right now, they have directly to do with the aggressive behavior that the mainstream media is taking against, Russians right now, because it's really to divert attention away from things happening in the US,
Before
things
you
that are
say,
not
sorry to
right.
interrupt, before you say anything, there's something that YouTube doesn't like is if we talk about what happened when, I'm going to say this in a French accent, Bidon,
Yeah.
when he came to, whatever.
Oh no, I
Yeah,
won't talk about that.
can't say anything about that because then videos get deleted.
No,
FYI.
I wasn't. Yeah, no, no, no. I actually, that's something that I did not want to talk about, is politics, because there's so much to say, and there's so many um, things that could be red flags for YouTube that it's just not worth, talking about that. But I mean, what I wanted to talk about really is how people, I think, right now in general, are lost in this media ocean of crap. I feel like there's so much information out there, and there's so much fake information, and so much of it is being debunked. But the debunking, if there's a word like that, it comes on, fine print at the very last page of, title 57-4. I mean, and you can never really be sure if something that was headlines, if it's actually a valid story, because most people are not living day to day
Hmm.
with all of that, front and center of their lives. So they'll look at the headlines and then they'll move on with their lives, and they won't know that this story or that story was debunked. And I'm not going to actually mention any of these stories because, again, we don't want to raise any red flags to
Well,
this video.
no, you can mention them to be specific. You just have to pick your words wisely and carefully.
Um, I'm not going to.
All right.
But we all know what those stories are. There are some major cities in the conflict right now that there are stories about maternity wards
Mm-hmm.
being destroyed, and it turns out that that was a fake story. There's the theater that was being bombed.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out that it wasn't, that there were some NIZIs that were in there, and that's why some of that stuff went down. So it's, I think for most people, what's happening right now is just really above and beyond what, they're used to in their normal lives. And it's so much easier just to find one bad guy and to say, okay, this guy is a dictator. He's caused all this. And I think even, the leaders of countries, these days like to take that as an excuse for their economic problems.
Well, there is one interesting story. It's not even a story. I mean, you can follow it. as we know, there are some cities in UA who have been part of very heavy fighting. Mariupol in the south, that's an example. The city is it's basically destroyed. Even though
Hmm.
a couple of days ago, school number 53, I believe, started working again.
In
But
Russian.
yeah, it is the city has been destroyed because for 7 or 8 years, depending on from where when you're counting, the forces there from Azov Aidar, mainly Azov
Hmm.
and right sector, they've been fortifying it and they were fighting from buildings. There's many stories out on YouTube of civilians exactly describing exactly what was going on. But if you take another city as an example, you take Kherson, where the mayor of that city decided not to participate at all. Okay? And life in that city goes on as normal. There were some fighting. There was some fighting in that city, but most of it is completely intact. Trade is still going on. Businesses are running. There are people with UA flags who are protesting, and people take. There are some, yeah, they exist. People film themselves doing it. Nothing happens to them. I mean, this should click in some people's heads that it's not like it's selective. It's not like, oh, we're just going to demolish this one city because we're Russian and that's what we do because it's in our nature, and yet we're going to leave another one alone because whatever. But there's Kherson, and there are other cities in UA who decided not to participate in this, and there's humanitarian aid from the Russian side. Everything is going on as normal. In fact, one of those cities, I believe the mayor of that particular city was smaller than Kherson. SBU, the Ukrainian FBI, I guess,
Hmm.
they kidnapped his daughter.
Oh yeah, that's a terrible story. I remember that.
Yeah, they,
Hmm.
they kidnapped his daughter. So if people in the U.S. and Canada and in Europe or any English speakers are after all of the evidence has come out on the internet, think that UA is just a bunch of people with little angel wings, and Putin went there with scissors and started cutting them off. Well, I mean, if you still think that, I suggest you dig deeper, because there's so much proof that that is exactly the opposite. It's not the case. The way they treat POWs, the way they execute them on camera, the way they use their own citizens, what they've said themselves about their own citizens, how they keep people and prevent them from leaving Mariupol. I mean, many, many videos available on the internet that people can view. I mean, if anything, Patrick Lancaster.
Yeah, I've watched him. He's
Remember,
amazing.
he's amazing. Anyone watching us from Canada, US, whatever, look up Patrick Lancaster. He's not a Russian. He is a very brave reporter, and he's there on the ground, and he's talking to people. Watch him. You don't have to watch me. You don't have to subscribe to me. I don't care. Watch Patrick Lancaster. It will explain a lot of what people from that city of Mariupol actually think about this whole conflict.
I have friends that at the beginning of this whole thing, at the end of in the end of February and March, that would be writing to me, and they are, people with college education, and they are just as American as they come, like American Catholic Midwesterners. And they would ask, how are you doing? What's going on with you? And I said, we're fine. We're in Moscow. Everything is okay. And they would ask me questions like, is this true? Is that true? And I would have to go one by one and answer. And they would ask, well, how is it possible that none of this is in our media? And I would say, well, some of it is. And I would drop some of the things from, page 78 of the news story. And they were flabbergasted because they couldn't believe that for them, what they thought was the narrative, that it's only part of the narrative. They really thought this was a very one-dimensional kind of a story, and we are told this is how it is. And I don't know if they, at the end of the day, if they bought, like, it almost felt like they would listen to me, and then they would be like, oh, that's interesting, and then they would go back to their way of thinking that everything is the way that the main media tells them, because it's much easier,
Mm-hmm.
it's much less frightening to think of the world as, black and white. And these are the good guys. These are the bad guys. We're with the good guys. We're going to help them. We're going to, pump them up. We're going to send them all kinds of, toys that are going to end up on the free market. And, we're going to do everything we can because we're the good guys. And unfortunately, the story is not like that. And I've had in Russia, I've had friends they came to visit us here. I'm sure you have to. They came for the World Cup. Like they lived in my apartment while we were out of the country. And I just had some family friends. I don't even know those people personally, but we let them stay in our apartment and they came and they had such a blast and they just had such a great time and they loved everything here, had such a great experience.
Remember the stories before the World Cup about Russia
Yes.
in English publications in America and how it
Yes.
was terrible? You'd get beaten up.
Yeah.
There was one big story in an English publication that Russians were getting ready to beat up English people, and they filmed this like it was either some kind of religious festival or it was some kind of cultural event, and there's men and women who were fake boxing out on the streets.
Where they go like wall on wall. It's like like a Slavic
I can't.
tradition of some sort, probably.
I can't
Mm-hmm.
remember, but either way,
Mm-hmm.
they plastered it everywhere, saying English people shouldn't go because it's so dangerous and everything. But that was an example of clear-cut Russophobia before any of these events actually happened. And meanwhile, this is 2018. There's been 4 years of the Ukrainian government bombarding its own people. They didn't care about that whatsoever. They wanted to
No.
make sure that people don't visit Russia because it's supposed to be an economic hellhole with gangs running around, no food, electricity, or drinking water. And it's super dangerous. And if anything, ignore all that. They're all communists, and that's bad. So don't go there. Like
Well, you read that the Ukrainian the UA propaganda is saying that the military men that are in this operation that they've never seen asphalt or running water or washing machines. Now this is my favorite, is that they are taking the washing machines as trophies to go to bring back home. Like,
yeah.
have you ever seen a washing machine?
Do you know how
Have you
heavy
ever
they
seen a
are?
tank? Have you ever seen an entrance to a tank? I'm just saying, I am by no means a military expert, just as I am not a vaccination expert or any of that. But you kind of can't add two and two together. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. Some of these stories are crazier than others, and I don't know who is expected to believe them. But you know what? The worst propaganda for the Russian, for goodness of Russia is, who's the worst of it is? It's not Solovyov or any of those, media personalities. You know who it is, right?
Tell me.
Masha and the bear.
Ooh, oh, they're so
Yeah.
dangerous, and they're
They are
banned as well. Yeah.
terrible. And you as a father and I as a mother, of course, know that there's nothing worse than infiltrating, a good message through our kids. And you know what that message is? Is that the bear, because it's Russian bear,
Mm-hmm.
bear equals
Mm-hmm.
Russia, that the bear is actually a nice guy.
I know, right?